How you doing, Barb?
I'm okay.
728. Whoa. Let's go on.
Why did the crowd?
They're probably... What are you nervous for?
Ooh, do you have 7:30, everyone?
720.
Okay.
7:29.
Okay.
Smile pretty.
Okay. Okay. You tell me when to start, Hector. Okay.
Just a mix of people. Just a mix of people.
Okay. Time?
No, come
Time.
on.
See?
I remain a Republican and I'm voting in the primary for county offices.
I hang on by a thread.
It's hard. It's very hard.
It's gonna get warm.
Well.
Nice strong signal.
Okay. Turn it over. Ready? Good evening, and welcome to this Lancaster mayoral debate, the first hosted by Lancaster newspapers in conjunction with the Lancaster Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I am Barbara Hof-Rhoda, the executive editor of Lancaster newspapers. And before we begin, I'm going to ask all of you to silence your cell phones and any other electronic devices you may have with you. I'd also ask that you refrain from applause or other kinds of outbursts until the debate concludes so that the candidates can make the most of the 90 minutes that we've devoted to this evening. Tonight's debate is being live streamed on lancasteronline.com and simulcast on Saka Radio WLCH FM 91.3. I am honored to present to you the two candidates on the ballot for this year's Lancaster mayoral election. Mayor Rick Gray, a Democrat who is vying for a third consecutive term, and Charlie Smithgall, a Republican who served as mayor from 1998 to 2006. The candidates will respond to questions from a panel of 5 individuals who represent divergent yet related areas of concern vital to the prosperity and quality of life in Lancaster and ultimately to all residents of Lancaster County. They and the subject areas of their questions are City resident Hilda Shirk, Ph.D., who is the CEO of Southeast Lancaster Health Services. She will pose questions about health and human services. Hector Valdez is a producer at the Spanish American Civic Association, or SACA Broadcasting, and he will ask questions about public safety. City resident and former councilwoman Jean Weglars is a member of the Planning Commission and the Property Reinvestment Board. She will ask the candidates about issues related to governance and leadership style. Tom Baldridge is president and CEO of the Lancaster Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and he will ask questions related to business and economic development. And finally, city resident Darlene Bird is the founder and CEO of the South Ann Concerned Neighbors, Inc., and a leader at Ray's Temple Community Church of God in Christ. Her questions will relate to neighborhood issues. The candidates will begin with introductory remarks, after which the panelists will pose questions. Both candidates will be given up to 2 minutes each to respond and an additional minute for any follow-up. Mayor Gray won a coin toss just a few moments ago, so he will open the debate with his introductory remarks. Mayor Gray.
Well, good evening, and thank you to the Lancaster newspapers for holding this forum tonight. In less than 2 weeks, the voters will be asked to decide who's best suited to serve as mayor for the next 4 years. In making that decision, I'd ask the voters to ask themselves 3 questions. First, who has the leadership ability and the temperament to best serve as mayor? A good mayor takes responsibility for mistakes, gives credit to others for any successes, tells people what they need to hear, not necessarily what they want to hear, and surrounds himself with advisors who know what they're doing and are willing to challenge and disagree with the mayor. The record shows my opponent is not an effective leader. The second question for voters is, which of us is in touch with the realities of today's Lancaster? Lancaster is a much different city than it was 8 years ago. Much has changed since my opponent left office. I would argue that Lancaster is a far better city. My opponent disagrees. In fact, at last week's NAACP debate, when asked what improvement occurred in the last 4 years in the city of Lancaster, what was better, Mr. Smithgall responded he couldn't think of anything positive that's happened in the last 8 years. His response is a clear indication that he's out of touch with what the city has become since he left office. Thanks to many people inside government and the outside in our own community, we've come a long way in those 8 years, and much remains to be done. Finally, I'd ask the voters to consider who has the vision and a plan for the city's future. My decision to run for mayor was after long and careful consideration as to what I have to offer city residents. Make no mistake, I'm a candidate by intention, not by surprise. I know what I want to accomplish in this city. On the other hand, my opponent comes as a reluctant candidate who was surprised by a write-in effort that he knew nothing about. He didn't decide to run for mayor. He didn't consider what his goals might be or what he'd like to accomplish. Instead, his candidacy came as a surprise, even to him. Given those circumstances, Charlie Smithgall does not have a vision or plan for the city's future. I believe the future is full of possibility, potential, and opportunity. I'm prepared to provide the leadership we need to reach that potential and to seize those opportunities. I look forward to discussing that vision tonight, and I welcome your questions. Thank you.
First of all, it's been a long time since I've been down here, and the sound system's never perfect. I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce and the Lancaster newspapers for having us here this evening. Many of you know me as the former mayor, but what I really want to be is the next mayor. I'm proud of the record I built when I was mayor, but rather than spelling out the record, I'd like to tell you what the Lancaster New Era wrote in an editorial when I left office. Quote, Smithgall presided over what many viewed as the city's largest economic and cultural expansion in 30 years. Falling crime rates, safer neighborhoods, improved city services, booming art sector, and downtown revitalization all had Smithgall's imprint, unquote. Examples, baseball stadium, Binns Park, the Keystone Opportunity Zone, Fulton Bank and Lancaster General Hospital expansion, bus station, Armstrong's new floor plant, F&M College Row, starting the cleanup of the old Armstrong lot that was a very contaminated property, neighborhood policing, and doesn't that sound like progress in the city? The city now faces new challenges, some brought on by the economy, some brought on by leadership focused too little on the needs of the residents. Let's look at the last 8 years. Property taxes have increased 60%. We've cut the number of police and fire, and they've also always opposed fire expansion and the equipment they need. Even debt has risen out of control. It's risen over $50 million more during the last 8 years than it has when I served as mayor. An ever-increasing unfunded pension liability that will cause property taxes to skyrocket if not addressed. What's been the result of this lack of leadership? We have lost long-time residents and established neighborhoods because they can't afford the taxes. Violent crime rates have increased to twice the national average. We've seen tragic and possibly preventable deaths of our citizens. And our commercial districts and economies suffer more than they should. It's a fact like these that drive me to run for mayor again. I am committed to progress on all these areas. I will restore fiscal discipline to control taxes and pay down debt. I will restore cuts to our police force and keep our residents safe. And as I did when I was mayor before, I will lead by example. I will refuse the taxpayer's pension, and I ask Mr. Gray tonight if he'll do the same.
Okay, thank you. Okay. There are some people standing along the back, so there are some chairs up front if you would like to sit, and if anyone has an empty chair beside you, if you would raise your hand, maybe some of these other people would have a seat. Okay. The first question of the evening will be from Dr. Shirk to Mayor Gray.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Lancaster City has the highest percentage of children in the county with elevated blood levels of lead and irreversible brain damage. The city ordinance requires landlords to make their properties lead safe, but this isn't happening in a timely manner. Too often, multiple citations are needed before action is taken by the landlords. Is this of concern to you, and if so, how would you propose improving enforcement to eliminate toxic lead levels for our children?
Yes, it's absolutely a concern to me. We have enforced to the best of our ability the lead levels, and we have an individual on the staff who works primarily in that area in reviewing and really attempting to keep landlords to that level. We've gone to court with landlords over lead levels in children, and in fact one landlord was fined, I think, $80-some thousand in federal court. It's a critical problem. Slum landlords, quite frankly, should not vote for me, and they know that already. I will not tolerate landlords in this city who want to come in here and exploit our people and just make money that they take somewhere else. We've passed a strict ordinance requiring landlords to register in the city and the license. We include inspections. For the first time, Art Morris tells me he did it. I didn't realize he did it, but for the first time since Art Morris, we've inspected all rental properties to assure that they comply with code conditions. So absolutely, it's a problem, and it's something we attempt to deal with. I should say this, though. Much of the money that we use for that type of enforcement comes from the federal government. As all other money coming in from outside, it's constantly decreasing, and it constantly provides or proves to be a more difficult task to do with less and less money.
Unfortunately, the city of Lancaster is blessed with many lovely old houses, but they were built before lead-free paint was invented. So anything from about the mid-70s on back, which is 99% of the city or 95% of the city, has lead in it. It has to be removed, it has to be covered, it has to be encapsulated. As a pharmacist, I've treated kids with lead poisoning. There's a chemical they can take that will take the lead out of their system. But unfortunately, sometimes it's too late. There has to be a cleanup system. There has to be lead removal specialists. Back when I was mayor, there was none licensed in the city of Lancaster. We got a few licensed, and I think there's still a few in the city to help take care of the problem. There has to be an education put on to parents who lives with children that live in older houses. You don't let them chew on the windowsills. You don't let them eat flakes of paint. You clean up, and one of the biggest, for education of the people here, one of the biggest causes of lead poisoning is the windows going up and down in the summer. That makes the paint come loose, and the lead dust is inhaled or ingested by the children. We've got to enforce the laws. We have to go back. There's machines that you can have and set on your thing and press a button, and it tells you the lead concentration, how it should be removed, and how it should be encapsulated.
Thank you.
The next question will be from Mr. Valdez for Mr. Smithgall.
Good evening. If more police and fire resources are needed and funds are limited, where is the money going to come from? What other city services might have to be curtailed in order to pay for increase for public safety?
Where's the money going to come from for fire department? I'm just boiling it down. The fire department is a very expensive thing to run, as is the police department. I've taken a study of the city employees. In the supervisory positions alone that are in City Hall that were added, there's 30 new employees. First of them is the mayor's chief of staff. Gets paid $75,438. I had no chief of staff. Charlie Smithgall made all the decisions in the city of Lancaster. It wasn't left up to somebody else. If you add up all these 30 people, you come up with a grand total of $964,454. They are unnecessary supervisors. They're supervisors watching supervisors who might only have one or two people to supervise. There's where I would clean out the dead wood in the city hall and be able to return police and firemen to the streets where they're desperately needed.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, he's wrong. Second of all, he's out of touch again with what I said in my opening. Many positions have been consolidated in the city government. If you look at the positions in city government and just count those positions, or look at the job titles, yes, in 8 years, a lot of things have changed, a lot of things. For example, Director of Director of Economic Development. There used to be a Director of Neighborhoods. That's one position now. There's been consolidation, there's been efficiency. We've followed the recommendations of a management study that the state was kind enough to provide the funds for, and we've changed an awful lot in City Hall. Now, Mr. Smithgall just counts the different positions that didn't exist when he was there. He doesn't count the positions that have been eliminated or consolidated. Right now, we have less people working in City Hall. And to call people deadwood is a nice, easy stereotype, but it's not a fact. It means services, it means lead abatement that we just talked about. That's deadwood. That's deadwood. So to say that there are new positions or 30-some new positions is just wrong. It's as easy as that. We've changed the positions, we've consolidated them, we've made the people more proficient, more effective, and give you a better bang for your dollar than we did 8 years ago.
Did you want to follow up on that at all?
Yes, I did. In the Sunday paper, it said there were 61 fewer employees in the city of Lancaster. Unfortunately, it's 61 fewer police and firemen.
That again is wrong, but you know, we've eliminated the staff in the city of Lancaster has been reduced by about 15%. There are less police officers than there used to be, that's correct. We also don't patrol Lancaster Township, which took 10 police officers and which also required our police officers, if somebody didn't show up for Lancaster Township, it required us to take somebody from the city and put them in Lancaster Township, thereby reducing the coverage in the city. In addition, there were probably a half a dozen of people in the police department on long-term disability that did nothing. We bought those people out, we bought the disabilities out and reduced the positions in the department. So there have been changes made. Finally, the police department is far more efficient and more effective than it was under Mayor Smithgall. Right now it is.
Okay, the next question is from Ms. Weglars for Mayor Gray.
Good evening, Mayor Gray.
Good evening.
How would you describe your leadership style, and would you please use some examples?
Sure. I like to say that my leadership style is sort of like an orchestra leader, a conductor. Teddy Roosevelt said you set a broad vision, you hire people that understand that vision, that are well trained and well prepared, and then you let them go and do their job. You work with them, you meet with them on a regular basis, you discuss what they're doing and make sure they're on track. An orchestra leader does the same thing. You're up there as a conductor, you conduct the music. You don't make the noise. You conduct it. You tell the first violin when to come in and the timpani when to hit the drum. But you're not the person doing the actual work. You are the person conducting, leading, leadership. My opponent's leadership style, he would get down and play the piccolo in the orchestra, and there would be nothing. There would be no one up on the stand leading the group and leading the people. So again, my leadership style, provide a vision, make sure the people understand it, make sure the people are qualified, listen to the qualified people, and work with them to pursue that vision.
Well, I greatly differ from the mayor's leadership style. I'm 100% hands-on. I'm a person who wants to listen to people. I'm a person who wants to respond to people. And if anybody's ever seen a conductor in an orchestra, I don't know how he does it, but he's listening to everybody in that orchestra. And you watch him. They'll be there conducting along, and they'll point to the second or third violin and say, he knows they're out of tune. That would be my job, to keep the city moving, to keep the city working, respond to the people in the city, which is not happening now. There's one miracle that happens in the world, is you call somebody, the phone rings, somebody should go, hello. It does not happen in City Hall right now. I've even answered the phone and people would say, is this the mayor? And I go, yeah. And I go, why are you answering the phone? I said, because the phone's ringing and the other people were busy. I would answer the phone and I respond. And I don't know if Pete's in here tonight. Pete Ruggieri was running for mayor. He was going to do a write-in campaign. He stopped me up at the dedication for the dog park. And he said, when you were mayor in 8 years, I called you twice. You called me back twice. Once I was right, once you were right. I said, I'm sorry about that I was right. He just laughed and said, no, that's it. He's called Mayor Gray 4 times. And I've heard this from many people. He has yet to get a response. I'm a full-time mayor. I've always been a full-time mayor. My phone number's always been listed in the phone book. And half of Lancaster has my cell phone number.
Well, if I could, first of all, you weren't a full-time mayor. You ran a pharmacy and worked in the pharmacy during the time that you were mayor. Additionally, it would come as a shock to you, but I take a lot of phone calls during the day, every day. And also, my phone number has also been listed in the phone book since I moved to Lancaster 42 years ago. That I think, quite frankly, I don't know where he gets this from, but again, if you want to compare management philosophies, he said it best when we first ran against each other. He has a whack-a-mole philosophy. When a problem pops up, you try to deal with it, but you don't anticipate things, you don't look ahead, you don't plan, you don't do strategic planning, you just wait for the mole to pop up and then try to whack it.
Mr. Smithgall, do you want to respond?
Just that he's totally wrong the way I do things. I respond to things, but I think of things in the future. And there's one thing that I do that's not happening. I listen to public input. It wasn't I that built the ballpark. It was not I that did the convention center, or it was not I that did Binns Park. I had community groups that met with us. One was Team Lancaster, another one was the Team Alliance. The Lancaster Alliance. I listened to input from the city. That's where all these things came from, because we listened to the needs of the city and we responded accordingly. Carlos is here. We had a problem down on South Plum. We tore those houses down. We went to the PFHA. I walked a guy around the neighborhood, and he was able to build new houses for people. And thank you for doing it, but we made the opportunity happen for you.
I'm going to follow up on this just a little bit longer and talk a little bit about responsiveness. You both talked about answering phone calls. What other kinds of ways do you try to get into the community to listen to people? And what kind of a time commitment is this? And the point is brought up about the pharmacy and the mighty task of being a mayor in a third-class city. So this would be an opportunity for you to maybe address that issue of how you would split time as a mayor and in your business as well. So it's kind of a general question for both of you.
Well, for 8 years that I was mayor, I owned 2 pharmacies. I rarely worked in them. If it was an absolute emergency, I would have been there. But the cell phone was there, the phone was there, I responded to people. I never left the mayor's office to go work in the pharmacy. The mayor's salary back then was around $66,000 a year. It cost me $80-some thousand a year to have a replacement pharmacist work there. Did the city do me a favor by paying me that money? No. I felt I owed the city something, and I've always lived on Lemon Street for my 68 years. No, doesn't matter where, but I've always lived in the same block of the same street, and I will continue to do so. But I love Lancaster, and that's why I'm mayor, and that's why I'm running again, and I'm running out of time. But I want to see Lancaster proceed in the future.
We're all running out of time, Charlie. Yeah, it happens with our age. A couple of things. First of all, I walk. It's my favorite form of transportation. I kiddingly tell people it takes me 20 minutes to walk a block. My wife knows if I'm going to meet her for lunch and I say I'll be there in 10 minutes, it'll be 20 minutes because I'll be stopped 3 times on the way. I listen to people, I talk to people. Not only that, over the years we have on numerous occasions, and I'd say dozens of occasions, held community meetings in all, well, quadrants, but there's 5 quadrants of the city. We include the annex to have a meeting where I get up and we just talk about what's going on in the city. Anybody has any questions, they can raise them, bring them up. I have open door. People can come in on Thursday morning between 9:30 and 11. Anybody can come in and talk about whatever they want to for 15 minutes. So I make myself accessible to everybody on a regular basis, on a personal basis, but also through structured meetings that we have in neighborhoods. Again, I don't know how many we've had, but we've had dozens of them in all the neighborhoods in the city.
And I have a little follow-up. I missed the neighborhood part. Or do you want to drop it?
I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
The neighborhood part, I didn't answer that. I was primarily concerned on pharmacy.
Well, go ahead go ahead.
Well, everybody that knows me knows I've been every quadrant of the city. I'll pick on this fine lady down here. We had Lancaster Council of Neighborhoods. The first Tuesday in August is always Crime Watch Night Out, and she would bring Red Hots up from North or South Carolina, I forget which one, South Carolina. But I went to every neighborhood. I was always in the neighborhoods. I was invited to anything. I was at quinceanera parties for the 15-year-old young ladies. I've been to, Reverend Bailey once said I'd be there every minute that he ever asked me. And that's what I try to do, is make myself available. And when I was in a neighborhood, people never feared talking to me. They would come up to me if I was at a fire. They'd tell me who started a fire. If there was a shooting, they'd tell me all that. People somehow, for some reason, felt comfortable talking to me, and I'd always respond.
The next question
Well, if I could respond to
Okay.
that. Where have you been the last 8 years? I've been...
I will answer that quick. Working in a pharmacy.
Well, that's right. There's been numerous occasions, numerous places, numerous events around the city. I haven't seen Mr. Smithgall at any of them. I haven't seen him walking in a neighborhood. I haven't seen him downtown. I haven't seen him at a community meeting. Once every 4 years, all of a sudden, he appears. The joke is that you can tell it's the Saturday before an election because Charlie's in Central Market. Think about how much you've seen him around when there isn't an election going on. You're out of touch with what's happening, frankly.
You have no clue how it takes to run a pharmacy. When you walk in there at 8 o'clock in the morning, you're there till 7 o'clock at night.
Wow.
And you cannot leave for lunch unless you have a pharmacist there.
Let's not start with who's clueless, Charlie.
Gentlemen, I think we're going to move on to the next question. The next question is Mr. Baldridge for Mr. Smithgall.
Good evening, mayors. Both of you at this point now have been mayor of Lancaster for 8 years in your respective terms. What do you both regard as your most significant economic development achievement and why?
I started a list earlier. Binns Park, baseball park, started a convention center. I mean, it just keeps moving on. You were one of the reasons some of these things happened because of the Lancaster Alliance, which you used to be chair of, then the Lancaster campaign, and now the Chamber of Commerce.
This is not why I asked the question, let's be clear.
No, I'm just being honest. I listened to everybody. The major achievements have been a great revitalization of the city of Lancaster. First Fridays, they started with 8 people. Now there's probably 8,000 downtown on the First Friday. Greatest achievement was just bringing the city back. I love to see the vibrancy, but we did not ignore the neighborhoods to do it. There was very little money spent on the things. We celebrate Lancaster. We had Lancaster Fest, which is now going. We had parades downtown. They were all great things that happened, and I can't say one special thing. It's everything, and the people that lived in the city are the ones that brought it about, not just me.
First of all, I'll point out that everything that Mr. Smithgall just alluded to doesn't pay taxes. Our economic development, the stockyards was there for all 8 years of Mayor Smithgall's administration. I got it torn down. It's now a business park. It now produces taxes. It has around 400 people employed out there, and we're close to finalizing the final parcel of it. Lowe's, it's in the city. We did that. Best Buy, it's in the city. We did that. Not only that, we've worked in the neighborhoods and we concentrated in the neighborhoods and neighborhood improvement. The real thing, I think, that if there's any legacy that I'm going to have, it's going to be the community or city reinvestment and improvement zone, which Mr. Baldridge is on the board of. I came to Senator Smucker with the idea that we should fund economic development in the city in a similar manner that they fund it in Allentown, and that's with the increase in state, not local, state taxes. Allentown has a neighborhood improvement zone. This year, their neighborhood improvement zone resulted in an additional $6 million in taxes for the school district without raising any taxes. We have a similar thing that myself and Senator Smucker and our staffs wrote and got through the General Assembly, got the governor to approve it. In fact, the governor listed it as one of his 6 main accomplishments in his budget. We think we're going to be the first city to get it. If we get it, the estimate is somewhere between $50 and $150 million in economic development that will occur in different quadrants and different portions of the city.
Can
Can I add something to that?
Sure.
He announced, made mention of the Stockyards project. There was a place downtown that used to surround up and down the Lancaster newspaper building. It was called Core Source. It had about 250 people working in there, primarily women. They would come out of that every day at lunchtime, and they'd go to market on market days, and they'd hit all the little restaurants downtown like the Fractured Prune. His economic development agenda was to move the people from downtown out to the stockyards where they do no economic benefit for downtown.
If I could, 8 years has been a long time, so let me tell you what actually happened there. Core Source advised us that they were going to move. They were going to move. The question was whether we could keep them in the city. And we worked on it. Randy Patterson, our Director of Economic Development, worked on it. We worked with the owner of the stockyards at the time and developed that piece of property and kept them in the city. They were not going to stay where they were. Also, again, come down to that property that CoreSource was in right now and take a look what's in there. The Community Foundation, an actuarial group. There's a half a dozen different businesses. There was one that just moved in, I forget now. The place is just about full right now with other workers. So not only did we keep CoreSource in the city, which they didn't want to be initially, but we also provided a place for other economic development and other people to work downtown.
I'm going to add something to it. CoreSource wanted to move out of town when I was mayor, and with Jack Buckwalter's cooperation, we kept them downtown. They could have been kept in town.
Well, one thing on that, I was the one that had to tell Jack Buckwalter that CoreSource was moving out of downtown. Jack was still negotiating with them. We wanted to keep them there. He wanted to keep them there. They were not going to stay. We created a great coup by keeping them in the city, keeping that tax revenue in the city, building a new building, having them pay their employee tax, but also filling up now what used to be the CoreSource headquarters with numerous other people that employ people and have businesses downtown.
Okay, the next question is from Ms. Byrd for Mayor Gray.
Residents cannot continue to keep having their taxes raised, so this question is about nonprofits and taxes. We have some nonprofits that have dried up because of lack of funding. Then we have the Lancaster General Hospital that is booming and growth is everywhere. We have county-owned buildings. We have the United Way, just to mention a few. Then we have grassroots organizations that have a very low operating budget and low overhead. We have churches that do a great deal of work with and for city residents that the government cannot do. When we talk about nonprofits and not-for-profits, we lump every organization together. What do you base or think the fair share is when we talk about taxes and paying them?
Well, but, am I going to?
Yes.
All I can say is amen. The nonprofits in the city, my guess is it's well over a third of the taxable properties for a city that relies on property taxes to finance police, fire, public works, public schools, and county government, all on property taxes. We've worked with Harrisburg and tried to get some reform, tried to get some other ways of raising taxes in the city, not raising property taxes, but raising the tax revenue necessary to run a city. Harrisburg, you get a deaf ear. They're all afraid that if they do anything that could be interpreted as allowing us to raise taxes or raising taxes, they might have some problem. What we've done, we've negotiated with Lancaster General. Lancaster General currently pays, I think it's $110,000, $115,000 a month in lieu of taxes. Why? Because I negotiated with them. They like what's happening in the city and they feel an obligation to pay. Probably more than they would pay if they paid all their property taxes. F&M, I negotiated with F&M. They now pay around $60,000, $70,000 a year, plus they take care of Buchanan Park. Why? Because I negotiated with them. Currently, our in lieu of taxes payments have totaled in the last 8 years over $9 million that we've gotten in lieu of taxes. I send out a letter every year to all nonprofits asking them to pay a third of their taxes. Some of them, the check comes back by return mail. Other ones can't afford it, and I can understand that. So payment in lieu of taxes and also tax reform is what we need.
First of all, I want to thank the General Hospital. They've always been more than generous with everything they've given to the city. They've always paid their fair share and probably even more. The mayor alluded to F&M. They don't pay a lot of taxes, but he said he negotiated the care of Buchanan Park, That is maintained by a thing called the Buchanan Scholarship. It was negotiated, and Art, are you still back there? Was it in your term, or was it Mayor Stork's term? I forget. It might have even been before that. F&M gives a scholarship to Lancaster residents, and their payment back for the scholarship is to mow the grass, pick the sticks up, and do the leaves in Buchanan's Park. It's been going on for decades. It's not anything new. The rest of the nonprofits, Darlene ran one. You couldn't afford to pay. You were putting every penny that you had in your product. Darlene, if you don't know, was fixing up houses that the city gave them under my administration and selling them to first-time home buyers. I want to continue that process, and I put out a thing called Homestead Lancaster, which would accomplish that. Other nonprofits, like churches, they can't afford to pay. They're like anything else. Nobody's giving them the money. There's no pennies falling from heaven. How some of these nonprofits stay in existence, I can't answer that right now. The donors are going away because the economy, no offense, but it stinks. Those nonprofits, we should be going to say, hey, you got a church here. Open your church. Open your gymnasium for the school districts, for kids to play basketball over at night, or to get tutoring with their homework, or just make sure they have a safe place to be and they're interested in something. There's more than money involved in collecting taxes from people. It's not all money. We need it. The biggest offender to me is the County of Lancaster. They owe us hundreds of thousands of dollars every year in taxes that they pay nothing. They've got the main courthouse at 50 North Duke. They've got the annex at 150 North Queen. It should have never been taken from the city tax rolls. They've got the prison, and they've got the youth detention center.
Well, first of all, I didn't say that I negotiated Buchanan Park. They include that as a deduction from their in lieu of tax payment. They were paying nothing. Maintaining Buchanan Park doesn't pay police or firefighters. Cash does. I negotiated with John Fry. I think it was around $60,000. It's increased, I believe, by $20,000 or more since then in actual cash to us. And we give them sort of a $40,000 credit for taking care of Buchanan Park that we don't ask them for that third of their taxes. In addition, I'd agree 100% with Mayor Smithgall. The Republicans that are in control of the county government ought to loosen the purse strings up a little bit and provide some payment in lieu of taxes. If they paid taxes in the city of Lancaster on county property, it would be $1.25 million a year that we provide services to them free of charge.
Dr. Shirk, the question is for Mr. Smithgall.
What role should the City Public Health Department play in addressing quality of life issues for city residents like food inspections, vector management, housing inspections, things like that? And is the department adequately resourced to protect city residents from public health hazards?
Well, the City Health Department is an entity unto itself. There was 2 health inspectors that went to check restaurants and everything else, so everybody could be assured that it was a clean, safe environment for you to have your food served to you when you went to a city restaurant. They'd even inspect the church restaurant, church kitchens, and the all food providers, the food trucks, the Dairy Queen trucks, the whole 9 yards, so that you had a safe, a reasonable acceptance of being safe. If somebody was in violation, I wanted my health inspectors to work with them to correct their problems and not be super punitive in the start. Give them a correction. If you have to, then go clean them up. Vector control, I went to the General Hospital and told them how many rats live in the city of Lancaster. General Hospital gave us a grant to poison rats. There was a systematic way to get rid of them. Vectors in houses, which include bed bugs. The health department has it, and believe me, they are overloaded right now. They have got a lot of things they have to do. They got a lot of things to keep after. When you get bed bugs in a house, you're not only treating, or cockroaches, you're not treating that house. You got to treat the houses on either side, and you got to clean it up. They have the power to do it, and on complaint, they would do it, and when the housing inspectors would go through the houses, they could see these things, especially the cockroaches. Bed bugs are real hard to find, and people don't want you tearing your beds apart. But upon complaint, they do work on them, and I'd like them to open more. And at one time, they suggested a countywide health department that would spread the inspections out through the county, because what happens in the city goes to the county, and what happens in the county comes into the city.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, our Department of Health, right now, we of course have the Board of Health that works independently, but we also have 2 health inspectors. Now, they're primarily restaurants and things that would focus specifically on cleanliness, for lack of a better term, but also for rats and that type of thing. They're involved in it, involved in monitoring and also poisoning. Housing inspectors are done primarily by our housing inspectors, who are now all certified. Again, any rental property has to be inspected at minimum once every 4 years, but also has to be licensed annually, and individuals can call for re-inspections and get it re-inspected. Our single hauler trash system has resulted in far less cleanouts that we used to have, where people would just put trash in the basement, if you can believe that, and would go into the house, in a row house. You can imagine a whole basement full of trash. We ended up cleaning it out. Our single hauler trash system has not only resulted in a higher recycling rate, also it's resulted in a larger amount of trash being taken out of the city and less cleanouts. Finally, it's also allowed us to employ 2 people, sweep officers, who are there just to enforce those laws specifically related to trash and public nuisances. So we have the health department, we have the housing inspectors, and we have the sweep officers, all working in different aspects.
Okay, the next question is Mr. Valdez for Mayor Gray.
The use of video cameras to fight crime in the city remains controversial. What your assessment of security cameras on our street, and will you comment on the expectation of privacy versus protecting the public?
Sure. First of all, I wrote about a 3 or 4 page request to the people that I appoint to the Community Safety Coalition Board about how they should assure that anything obtained through those cameras is used only for law enforcement and is not used in some spurious way. I saw you going into so-and-so's house that night or something like that. There are definite civil liberty issues involved that we should always remain aware of and concerned about. And to this time, at least, I haven't seen abuses that would worry me. So that said, what do I think about it? Is it controversial? The biggest controversy is, why isn't it in my neighborhood? That's the question I get more often than anything else. I don't get questions about invasion of privacy. I get questions from people, well, you put them here, you put them there, but you don't put them in our neighborhood. They're in every neighborhood. They're around in every neighborhood. They're expensive to put in, and they're expensive to run. Now, how are they used? Well, generally, occasionally, but generally, it doesn't see somebody in the course of committing a crime. What happens is, somebody was assaulted, the police will go to the cameras in the surrounding area around that time and look at the videos and spot a person, a vehicle. It's used as an investigative tool after the fact, more than actually photographing or taking pictures of the crime occurring. Our chief of police tells me it's very useful. I believe him. I've seen cases solved because of it, and I support it.
Well, the matter of the cameras all around town, that started under my watch. It started after September 11th. Everybody started to increase their security. I've called all the business people in the area together. Out at the General Hospital, we had a meeting, to determine that if you had a camera system around your thing, make it something that the police, if they had to, could get access to. I have one in a pharmacy, and they're out once every 2 or 3 months reviewing all my cameras for in and out on the street. But the idea was to look around the city. We, under my watch, put fiber optic lines to every light signal in the city. And they were going to buy like an 8 or 10 or 12 fiber optic system. For a few cents more, you could buy 24 conduit. So every place there's a traffic light, there's a possibility of having a camera. When the Public Safety Coalition was established, it was copied off one down in Newark, I believe, Delaware, or one of the cities in Delaware, I forget exactly which one. It was copied after them. They had the cameras up and they had them watching, primarily in their downtown area, was where we started from. But we had one thing that's different now than there was then. There was people watching the cameras, but there was a watcher watching the watchers, so they didn't see who was going into things. Some of the cameras are inappropriately placed that have been placed in the last couple of years. I know of one where there's an Alcoholics Anonymous and a Narcotics Anonymous that has a camera right outside. Those people are trying to clean up their lives, and maybe that camera should be turned off.
If I could, in response, the reason we have the cameras is because of the generosity of the Steinman Foundation. They provided a lot of the funds to originally get the cameras in. There was a question of sustainability, and I had talked to Jack Buckwalter at the time as to how we were going to sustain this. It's been an uphill battle to get the money to keep it going. The committee, or the city, has made a commitment of $100,000. We negotiated with the district attorney, got him to commit to $100,000 a year for the next 5 years. In addition, with our commitment and with the DA's commitment, the Community Safety Coalition's been able to go out and raise additional funds sufficient to support and maintain the cameras. So I think finally, as of really last year, I think the sustainability of them is in place.
I'm going to exercise my right as moderator to follow up on a question just for 1 minute each, if we could do that. And that is about, you had talked about the county, and both talking about the idea of, for lack of saying this in a nicer way, getting a little bit more money from the county for the city.
Getting any money from the county.
Right. So I guess I'd like to ask two questions, or piggyback them. How do you assess the formal county relationship with the city, and how do you go about doing that, getting some money for the city from the county?
Yes.
I guess since we're following up here, I'm going to have Mr. Smithgall start on that one.
Well, with the county, you've got to talk to the county commissioners, and you have to show them the need, and they have to own up to what they owe the city. They owe us a lot. The prison alone takes a lot of the city time and the city staff time, and then, don't go into it, but the sewer system out there causes us meaning the city of Lancaster, a lot of grief. You have to go talk to them, you have to get the money from them, and they've got to cooperate, and they've got to really realize they owe us something. 4 major projects that take a lot of city maintenance. And what was the second part?
I'm going to need a little help here.
The county
How would you
relations?
assess the relationship?
Yeah. How do you assess the relationship between the two?
Well, when I was mayor, we had a good relationship. They would want to do something, and they'd come to me. It was not uncommon. The first thing in the morning, 3 county commissioners were sitting in my office, and we'd talk through an issue. One of the big ones was a youth detention center, which I wasn't really in favor of, but I made lemonade out of lemons because I got them to relinquish control of the whole Sunnyside Peninsula for housing to be built. I went after them for other things. They supported county, city events in the city. They were donors to things. They would help us. They'd make staff, like sheriff's office, would make themselves available when we needed them. I think we had a good relationship then. I can't speak of how it is because I don't deal with them on a day-to-day basis now.
Well, that's...
Well, I remember the good relationship that Mayor Smithgall had with the county commissioners when he called on 2 of them to resign over the convention center. It was far from a good relationship. It was a contentious relationship. I get along with them. We have mutual interests that we work together on. We're working together right now in the convention center to try to solve some of the financial problems caused by the manner in which it was financed. So I meet with them, I talk with them, I get along with them. It's not a problem. On the other hand, I think they ought to pay city taxes. We provide police and fire protection, we provide public works. Why shouldn't they pay for it like anybody that owns a home in the city of Lancaster? It would be a way for people all over the county to share, tax share with the city and to really pay us for what we provide for their facilities.
Okay, the next question is Ms. Weglars for Mayor Gray.
This may allow you to continue that conversation. What do you think is the city's greatest financial challenge, and how would you address that challenge if you continue in office as mayor or return to office?
Well, our greatest financial challenge is trying to continue to maintain our public safety and maintain our services with nothing but property taxes. Property taxes are really counterintuitive. I think it was in Cypria recently that they had talked about taxing your savings account. Not the interest you earned off it, but your savings account. Well, what would you all do if they taxed your savings account? You'd take your money out of the savings account. That'd be easy enough. We tax property with the idea in mind that because somebody lived in a house for 50 years and paid it off 30 years ago and is living on Social Security, but now because they own property, they can afford to pay taxes on that house. It's not true. It's not true. Property taxes are okay if they're low and a maintenance kind of tax. But you cannot fund police, fire, public works, schools, and county government on the backs of homeowners, especially in a community like the city of Lancaster. So what do you do about it? Well, I've been to Harrisburg. Again, I've advocated tax reform. I think some of the new ideas that they're talking about, different ways to finance our public schools, I might not agree with some of the proposals, but at least they're talking about let's stop with the property taxes and look at other ways to finance our public schools. If public schools could be financed in another way, your property taxes could be cut by 2/3, and we would have all the funds we need to run city government. So reform on the state level is really what's necessary.
Could you please repeat the question?
Yeah. What do you think is the city's greatest financial challenge, and what would you do to address that challenge?
Well, the city has a whole lot of challenges. In 2011, Mayor Gray issued a task force to prosper or perish. This is probably the single most thing that made me decide to run for mayor. Challenges are debt and lack of services. In 2007, there was an $11.8 million fund balance. 2010, it was $7.2 million fund balance. 2012, it's $3.12 million. I'd love to show it to you, but it's been taken down off the city website. The thing was there. There's one thing that this report says. He did some of the things in it, but there's one minor factor has not been brought up. When you decrease public safety, you increase taxes, which have gone up 59.6%. You decrease fire, and you lengthen the amount of time it takes police to respond to you, your city will fail. We've got to get the city back, we've got to get the public safety back, and we've got to get the financial house in order. The way to do it is not by taxes. It's by have a thorough examination of every penny that's spent in this city and bringing it back in line. We are taxed to death. I've got a tax report here from a gentleman, and I'm going to run out of time. His taxes have almost doubled on a property since 2007 and now. How long is it going to be till we drive all the good citizens out? And we can't do that. We've got to find better ways to get the taxes and better use of our money.
Well, again, 8 years is a long time. You're dead wrong on the amount we have in reserve. Accounting principles have changed, but we have $12 million in reserve right now. We had a $2 million surplus last year. That one. Two, I'd want to remind you that I was mayor during the worst economic turndown since the Depression. What happened to Harrisburg? What's happening to York? What happened to Reading? Why didn't it happen to Lancaster? It didn't happen to Lancaster because we bit the bullet. We didn't do what we wanted to do. We did what we had to do. That's the reason we're in the shape we're in right now. That one. Two, to keep on saying that Lancaster is not safe is really degrades our police department and really belies the statistics, the honest statistics, not some thing about the national crime rate and compare us with Keokuk, Iowa. We're talking about, let's look at York, let's look at Reading, let's look at Harrisburg. 4 years ago, Mayor Smithgall said, oh, Lancaster isn't as safe as Harrisburg. He's not saying that now because the crime rate, it's definitely for violent crime higher in those other cities. Police officers, if you look at the number of police officers we have.
We have time on this one.
Oh, okay.
But if you want to rebut, we'll go back and forth. Do you have a comment?
Sure.
Okay.
I always have a comment. He said crime's not down. Well, the police department's down 20% in staffing. We're in a reactive mode of policing. When I was mayor, we were in a proactive mode of policing. Murders right now are up 78.6. Rapes increased 6.9%. Robberies 6.2. Assaults are up 13%. Are these acceptable? Do I want to be measured against Harrisburg as a city? Do I want to be measured against York or Reading? No way. I want this city to have no crime.
Well, I think we just found something we can agree on. Everybody wants the city to have no crime. You know, that's all well and good. Homicides, 1998, 2004, 46. 2006 to 2012, 49. Sound like a, 300% increase? From last year, we're down 15% with the most current report for violent crime. We have, for the number of police and the number of people and the area patrolled, about as well-staffed a police department as you're going to find in central Pennsylvania. Mayor Smithgall talks about when he was mayor. Well, quite frankly, the things that they did then are considered antiquated by police today. We do a totally different method of policing that's far more effective and better utilize and more productively utilize our police.
Mr. Smithgall, if you want to, okay. All right, the next question is from Mr. Baldridge to Mr. Smithgall.
This question is all about looking forward. If you are elected, what will you make your economic development priority and how will you make sure it gets done?
Oh, let me look for a cheat sheet that I can't find. Economic developments, the CRIZ is right on the cusp of maybe being approved for the city. I would regard that as the KOZ. The KOZ didn't do good because the economy flopped in the middle of it. But go to the CRIZ and run it. There's over 100 acres that are available for development in the city. If somebody wants to go into a KOZ property, you can pull it out of the KOZ and put it in the CRIZ. You can do anything you want. One thing that I did when I was mayor, and you'll admit it, is I went to Washington, I went to Harrisburg, and I got as much money for economic development projects as I could. Things that I want to do in Lancaster, make it a better place. The main thing is finish Lancaster Square on the east side. That's laid dormant for 8 years. It should be finished into something. And the CRIZ is a thing to maybe make it happen. but nothing's been done there except the money that I got for them to tear down part of it from the federal government in 8 years, and they put a rubber surface down. It's still ugly, it's outdated, and it's a mess. It's got to be brought around, and it's got to be helped. That would be my number one priority. But there's other buildings all around and other properties that need attention. And when I was mayor, I would go to a business if I heard they wanted to be here. And my number one goal was to get them into the city. If I couldn't get them into the city and it wouldn't fit, I would try to get them at least into the county so city people would have a job someplace close to the city.
Well, Lancaster Square is a work in progress, I'll just put it that way. Going to Washington and going to Harrisburg for money, might as well talk to the door over there right now. It's not going to be there. The CRIS, the program that we're talking about, I was warned don't use acronyms. Well, sorry. We wrote the legislation. We know it. I'm not sure if Mayor Smithgall's read the legislation, but we wrote it. We're writing the regs right now. We're participating in writing the regs. Well, what will that do? Well, it'll produce the opportunity to provide some public funding through bonds, through the terrible method of bond funding that we talked about tonight, through bonds where you can develop undeveloped or underdeveloped property. What should we do, though? Should we look at that as just tax money, or should we look at it as an opportunity? We have Stevens Tech we're really giving them a sweetheart deal to buy the old armory in southeast Lancaster to expand its services. Tech Central, we're working closely with SACA for Tech Central. What we want to do is get businesses into the city by providing the economic incentive of the CRIS, providing that money for CRIS. But when we do that, we want to make sure that we provide the opportunity for people who live in the city to get jobs. That's what we want. That's the primary thing, because those are my people, the people that will work there, not necessarily the people that own the properties. So working with Tech Central and Stevens College to train people for jobs that we can produce when the CRIS begins the economic development. That would be my top priority.
I've got a list of other priorities, but let's go to Stevens first. Given him a golden deal, a building that's assessed at $1 million, he wants $4 million for. Stevens Trade's trying to scratch, or Stevens College now, is trying to scratch the money to buy the thing at 4 times the appraised price. Things that I want to accomplish, and this is a minor thing, lighting in Penn Square. It's dark at night. People don't feel safe when it's dark. We had destinations downtown. With the convention center, you wanted someplace for people to go. They're all closed. We got to get them back again. We need the neighborhood policing back. I'm promoting, we have First Fridays that are 1 day a month. There's 29 or 30 other days a month that we have to have some reason to bring people in town. And we've got to increase our intermunicipal cooperation.
Okay, if I could respond to that. First of all, there's also Music Friday, which brings a lot of young people downtown. There are 140 new businesses that opened in the city of Lancaster, $1.3 billion in economic development in the city of Lancaster in the last 8 years. Neighborhood policing, if you wanted neighborhood policing, you shouldn't have gotten rid of it. 2003, they got rid of the bicycle patrol. Neighborhood policing is not considered good policing today. Neighborhood policing in the context that former Mayor Smithgall talks about it. New policing, a lot's changed in 8 years. New policing is a totally different type of policing that does crime mapping, quick response. Mayor Smithgall said about response time. Talk to our chief of police. The thing he's proudest about is the response time of the police in the city of Lancaster, which is second to none.
Can I add one to that? Mm-hmm. Talk to the people who live in the city that have called the police. I'm hearing anywhere from 45 minutes to 2 hours response time.
Well, if I could again, 8 years has been a while. If it's a code 7, shots fired, officer in trouble, sirens are blasting, they're there. If it's little Jimmy's bicycle was taken on Saturday and it's now Tuesday, they'll go there when they can. That's a code 1. So it's all graded as they come in as to what gets priorities.
We'll move on to Ms. Byrd, a question for Mayor Gray.
We all know and probably agree that Lancaster City is the heart of Lancaster County and that downtown Lancaster is the heart of Lancaster City. We know if the arteries and the veins going to the heart are not in good condition, the heart will eventually go bad. What will you do to address issues like lighting, existing housing stock, and slowing traffic down in neighborhoods like South End Concerned Neighbors, and putting things that have made downtown more appealing into the neighborhoods of our city?
Well, the question is what I would do to make the neighborhoods more appealing. First of all, we did not ignore neighborhoods. Quite to the contrary, we've made neighborhoods a priority. We've made neighborhoods a priority when it comes to slum landlords, when it comes to rental units, which are more than half of the people in the city live in rental units. We want them inspected. We don't want people in here profiteering off our residents. That number one. Number two, we have been doing more and more lighting around. I would agree with you. The difference between an individual and a car is a car has headlights. What do you need street lights for? You need sidewalk lights. Slowly we've expanded the areas where we've put boulevard lights in, and they're coming to all the neighborhoods. 3, we have a program for people who want to purchase houses and want to build on houses, want to own their own houses. We want homeowners, if they want to be homeowners, to have the opportunity no matter what their economic level. So we've been working in all those areas to try to improve our neighborhoods. I disagree with you that the arteries, if you're saying the arteries aren't good.
No, I didn't say that. I said if we know if they're not.
Oh, we know if they're not,
So-
because
right.
I think our neighborhoods, I take people from outside the city around and drive them around, and they're floored by our downtown and our neighborhoods, and I mean all our neighborhoods. Every neighborhood has its unique character and has something to offer. Every neighborhood has strong families, strong churches. So, you know, we'll continue to work and build on what we've done already.
I want to interject something here. Mayor Gray, you're a very articulate speaker, but I'm a businessman and a pharmacist. The reason I accomplished so much is I was willing to work with the city, make decisions, and move forward on an individual basis with businesses and everything else. I am just a businessman that wants to accomplish something. On Darlene's comments, the city downtown is great. The neighborhoods are suffering around it. Going door to door, I've seen many, many, many houses that are condemned, boarded up, walked away from. These have to be taken back faster, sooner, and turned over to people like Darlene Byrd if you still have your thing in existence. That's why I call it Homestead Lancaster, where somebody can buy a home at a greatly reduced price, fix it up. If they live in it 10 years and they sell it, they make all the profits. If they don't live there 10 years, they live 5, they split the profit with the city to reinvest in another home. They have to be taken back sooner and given to people to fix up. Some of the houses are too bad for a private person to do. They should be turned over to known contractors like Harry Yelitz that could reestablish it, rebuild it, and turn it over to a home buyer. He's doing one over in Filbert Street that was falling down. I thought they'd have to tear it down, but he fixed 2 houses up, and he's returned it to a homeowner for $60,000. You've got to work with the people. You've got to work in the neighborhoods. It's not just downtown. We have a city here, and we have to make the whole city great.
I'll say this in response. If anything Mayor Smithgall can be accused of, it's ignoring the neighborhoods. Really. We are the ones that went out and inspected the properties. We are the ones that went after the slum landlords. The current administration is the ones that address problems in the neighborhood and continues to address problems in the neighborhood and take on difficult issues. Single hauler trash. Mayor Smithgall had a proposal. As soon as a group of people said, no, 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 we don't want that, he folded. He folded on it. It wasn't pleasant what we went through to get it, but it made a difference in the city and continues to make a difference in the city as to the cleanliness of the city. The first time I went around, first election, one of the biggest complaints was people that leave their garbage cans out in the curb 24 hours a day. Seems like a small thing. Doesn't happen anymore. We've addressed the problems in the neighborhood and continue to.
Mr. Smithgall?
I've always worked in the neighborhoods. I will always work in the neighborhoods. My neighborhoods are my number one priority. I didn't go to a neighborhood meeting and preach to the people. I would listen to the people. I'd hear their concerns. And trust me, every neighborhood had a different problem. As the way to get the city better is pay attention to it, work on it, and just listen to the people. You got to go into the neighborhoods and talk.
Well, you should have come to some of our neighborhood meetings and you would have seen me listening
I was
to
at your neighborhood meetings and you lectured the audience at Reynolds.
When were you there?
The first one at Reynolds, and I didn't need a lecturing. That's what you did to everybody there, and there was no input from the audience.
Well,
We'll move on to the next question. Dr. Shirk.
by the way, once again, you're wrong, but go ahead.
Dr. Shirk
Afraid not.
Dr. Shirk for Mr. Smithgall.
What's the appropriate role for city government in addressing the plight of people who are homeless?
Appropriate role for homeless. We had more places when I was mayor to put people in. Crispus Attucks would take in people that were homeless on the street. They no longer have their homeless shelter. That leaves the Water Street mission to be the main person. Now the problem with Water Street is if you go there and you don't listen to their rules, you're back on the street and you're wandering around town. One of the things, and it's a minor thing, and I noticed it when I walked in the door here, this is a public building. City Hall has the same sign. It says no public restrooms. I would propose putting porta potties around town so at least they have a place that they can go to the bathroom. And if somebody's walking through town or shopping and you got to go in a hurry, there'll be one. And you can put them out of the way where they're not really noticed. On homeless, we got to try to find places for them to go, get them straightened back out and moved on. Unfortunately, the mental health community has put too many people on the street that need too much help. Now, the city has to take care of them. I see them almost every day in the pharmacy. Yeah. They need help, and they should be in a structured environment, and they have been just cut loose and let on the street.
Well, I agree with public bathrooms. We need more of them, but I'll say this. There's a porta potty over in Lancaster Square that the parking garage put in, the parking authority, and they're taking it out because it's so filthy and on a regular basis vandalized. It's a difficult problem. We need more public restrooms, no question about it. Same in City Hall. Who was using the City Hall bathroom? It's a problem. Now, as to the homeless, we got some money with the stimulus program to develop a homeless program to keep people from being homeless. And I went to the county and said, this is not a city problem. People say to me, oh, you know, you have so many homeless in the city. Over half the people at the rescue mission are not from the city. But if you're going to be homeless, you're not going to be homeless in Peckway. You're going to have to come to the city. Why? The social services are here, the churches are here, the meals are here, the places to sleep are here. So we've got to recognize we have that additional responsibility. We also have to recognize we're the poorest community in the county. So you can't expect the poorest community in the county to take care of the poorest people in the county. So I said to them, this is a county problem and we expect you to address it on a community, not a city basis, but a community basis, our whole community of Lancaster County. How do we address homelessness? The most recent stuff has shown that the biggest problem with homeless people, and I know it sounds simplistic, is they don't have a home. If you could provide just a small living place for a person, the studies have shown that the amount that you spend on social services and whatnot is dramatically reduced. So we're looking at that, we're working with groups to do it, and we view it not as a city problem, but a county and community problem.
One of the things that can be done is to go to HUD down in Washington and ask for help and ask for money to accomplish these goals. They're willing to help. I've been down to HUD many a times. I think Tom went with me one time when we went down with Reverend Bailey for a home ownership program. They're willing to help. If you're willing to go ask, you must ask.
Well, again, 8 years is a long time. You can go to Washington all you want and ask for all you want. You're not going to get much, and you're going to get less each year than you got last year. Our home funds that we do get to provide services to people in the city that own homes, every year decreases. Every year goes down. Our community development block grant money every year decreases. So to say to go to Washington and ask for money, yeah, you know, you might as well go to Santa Claus and ask for money because it's just not there anymore. It's a different world. Times have changed.
Mr. Valdez for Mayor Gray.
The city lost police coverage of Lancaster Township to Manheim Township. Are you going to try to get that contract back? Why or why not?
Absolutely not. We are not going to try to get it back. Our police tell me, first of all, we were losing money on it. And we told them how much it cost to provide the services. Now, people say, well, how can Manheim Township do it so much cheaper? They didn't provide the detectives and the backup and follow-up that we provided, and our police department would not provide half a loaf instead of the whole loaf of police services, number one. Number two, it took police officers out of the city. They went out of the city. Whenever Lancaster Township was down an officer or two, it meant an officer or two that we don't have in the city. They ended up in Lancaster Township. So, no, I'm not interested in it. I wouldn't want it unless they want to pay us the actual amount that it costs, and I doubt if they do. And again, the police tell me we're fine without it and we're better off without it. So, no, I'm not interested in it at all at this point.
This comes under the category of intermunicipal cooperation. We lost the policing that we had in Lancaster Township. We lost a hazmat that we had for the whole county because we were the only paid fire company, and they paid well. Now, just recently, about 8 days ago, we lost centralized booking, and the excuse is we lost money on it. That is not correct. I negotiated the last contract with Lancaster Township. When we did it, we even figured Lancaster Township's share of dumping the trash, how much water the police officers used for the share in the main police station, an agreement for the use of the things. And he says Manheim Township doesn't provide detectives. Well, I heard this the other night at a debate. So what did I do yesterday? I called Manheim Township and asked, do you supply detectives to Lancaster Township? The answer was, yes, we do. We do it all the time. We're always investigating something in a township. So that's a fallacy. I was at the meeting when the negotiations went south with Lancaster Township and the police. And the mayor was downright insulting to the people of the township. I think Manheim Township could have come in at double the price and they would have taken them. The city was making money on it, and they were willing to pay a little more for inflation and everything else. But the deal was lost, and it's going to be a long time till intermunicipal cooperation is brought back in the city of Lancaster.
If I could, if intermunicipal cooperation means that the city pays for services for county residents the way we do at 150 North Duke or on the prison or the Youth Intervention Center or 40 East King Street, you know, that's his idea of intermunicipal cooperation, that we pay and give. Hazmat, we would lose money on it. And we're worried about the number of firefighters we have. Somebody spills gasoline up in up in Elizabethtown, those firefighters go up. Do we back them up? How do we cover for them? What does it cost us to bring people in on overtime? 1. 2, centralized booking. We had a study done, and they said you're losing money on every person that comes through here. We lost that? Did we lose it? We lost it when I sent them a letter and said, unless you want to change the billing rate for this, you might as well do what every other county around here is doing and do it yourself. We're losing money doing it for you. They took it. They said, fine, we'll do it out the county prison. We're fine with that. That's fine. We will save money as they do it, and it won't be any problem for us.
Move on to Mr. Did you want to rebut that, Mr. Smith?
I'll just ask, how many people did you reduce in your staff when you got rid of centralized booking? And I'll bet you the answer is 0.
We're going to move on to the last question of the evening, and that would be Ms. Weglar's directed toward first Mr. Smithgall.
Okay, this will be a split question. For Mr. Smithgall, how do you feel about the fact that members of City Council will continue to all be Democrats? And given that, how would you expect to use City Council to further your administration?
Well, there's one thing I can say about the council members. They're all individual people. One thing I tried to do all my life was get along with everybody. I can get along if people are willing to get along back. It's a two-way street. A city council person takes an oath to support the city of Lancaster and the Constitution and all that. They should uphold their oath. There's one thing that I will do with city council, is I'll let them speak their mind, and I would encourage City Council to let them have more public input at City Council meetings. Everything's quiet, and it's a 7-0 vote right now, and it's not good government. That's how we're in the debt that we're in right now. They're not questioning. When I was mayor, and I know what's coming out of his mouth, that I fought with City Council. I didn't fight with City Council. I let them lead the ship. They would say, if I recommend a thing, City Council passes the final budget with tax. City Council would say, I don't want that kind of tax increase this year. Or they'd say, yes, they would. But they discussed it, and they listened to the public. And that's what I would expect in a current, if elected, I would do everything I could do to get along and keep the members of City Council apprised of what's happening and what's coming up like I did in the past.
Mayor Gray, how do you respond to those who think that the City Council does little more than rubber stamp what it is asked to do by your administration?
I think they're just like Mayor Smithgall, and they never come to any city council meetings or any committee meetings that see the actual work being done by City Council, where they have a lot of input in the things that go on, discuss things. Really, at committee meetings is where the work's done. Now, Mayor Smithgall might have been at 2 or 3 city council meetings since he wasn't mayor. I attended 2-3 years of city council meetings before I decided to run for mayor. His problem with city council was not partisan. He couldn't get along with city council. There were constant fights. And really, you had replicated what you have in Washington and Harrisburg right now on a regular basis in city council. The reason? He didn't respect city council. He didn't understand the role of city council. He didn't respect them, and it was mutual. They did not respect him. We have a different relationship on city council now. By the way, there was a 6-1 vote last night on an amendment to an ordinance. We have a different relationship now in City Council. I respect them and their role. I understand their role. I work with them. They work with me. And we do what everybody agrees is the best for the city of Lancaster. So I'd hate to see what's going on in Washington and Harrisburg happen in Lancaster. It was at one time.
On City Council, he had a 6-1 vote the other night. It's the first one I've heard in a long time for 6-1. I read the paper. There aren't many, but we'll let that drop. To do the business of the city in a committee meeting where people don't come is not fair to the citizens of this city. It should be in this auditorium filled with you people to get the input, to listen to what's going on, hear what's going on, and add to the discussion. And if 40 people want to speak on the same thing, Ted Darkus was president, he'd let 40 people speak on the same thing. They ran city council. I got along with them. We never fight like he's claiming. Good government is two different sides looking at the same project and coming up with a consensus. And I don't ever want to be associated with a mess on both sides that's happening in Washington.
I'll say this, that if Mayor Smithgall had been at any committee meetings, he would recognize the fact that the public is there. The public does participate. There's a broad discussion. Very often things are sent back to the administration. We're advised to tweak things, change things. It's civil, it's intelligent, and it's on point. If that's objectionable, and if they rule by very often consensus is objectionable, so be it. Look at the other cities around here and what they have for councils. I'd put our city council up against any city council in central Pennsylvania.
We're going to move on now to our closing comments, and we'll begin with you, Mr. Smithgall.
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming out this evening. And what you've seen tonight are two different approaches for the future. While my opponent claims things are going great, the facts I have cited show it differently. I do not begrudge Mr. Gray's beliefs, nor do I think he's a bad person. What I do believe is that we can do better. We can do better than a 60% property tax increase. We can do better than violent crime that's twice the national average. We can do better than cutting our police while building a new palace to the government, which, by the way, is $555 a square foot. The convention center was only $247. We can do better than saying we support local businesses, but using all outside companies to build a new city hall. We can do better for our residents, the people of the city. Elect me your mayor, and I will do better. I will use common sense to put our fiscal house in order. I will use determination to restore our police force and drive the criminals back out of Lancaster. I will use cooperation to bring together everyone in the city to drive economic revitalization that will bring new jobs and new revenues in our town. And I will use my proven and tested abilities as a leader to ensure we make real progress, all of us, as we move forward. Then I'll say to Mayor Gray, with all respect, you would make a wonderful professor, but the city needs a businessman who's in charge and wants to help Lancaster progress. A few final thoughts before I run out of time. Can we afford another 4 years? Do you feel safer than you did 4 or 8 years ago? Thank you again for letting me be here tonight, and hope we move Lancaster forward to a better future. Thank you.
I too would like to thank Lancaster newspapers for holding this forum tonight. You've seen two drastically different candidates. I will point out that I didn't inherit a law practice. Everything I got myself. I built myself. To say that that isn't a business would surprise a lot of lawyers and surprise a lot of businessmen too. Tonight you've heard my opponent take credit for some major successes we've experienced in the city. The convention center, which he told me to let it die when I got in office. It was in such bad shape. First Fridays, which started in the 90s really, and the government had nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it. The artists and the art community started First Fridays, not Mayor Smithgall. Clipper Stadium, where I had to get the $900,000 that Mr. Smithgall promised surreptitiously, never told anybody on council. I had to get it from Governor Rendell because they couldn't finalize the payments on it. He takes credit for all of that. But he doesn't acknowledge the efforts of so many others who contributed to the success. It's not me or Charlie, it's a lot of other people that make this city work and run. Nor does he acknowledge the mistakes that were made or the opportunities that were lost during his time as mayor. An example says I raised taxes. He didn't raise taxes one year. He did a bond swap, got $700,000. I had to get the $4 million to buy us out of that Smithgall's bond swap. I had to do that, not him. These lost opportunities show that this is not leadership and it's not what Lancaster needs. Tonight, you've heard my opponent talk as if he knows what's happening in the city these days. It's been 8 years since he left office. Before this campaign began, did you run into him downtown or Central Market? Did you see him in your neighborhood? Have you seen him at any First Friday events? Did he attend any city council meetings? I'll tell you, no. Maybe 1 or 2 in the last 8 years. Or a downtown celebration event. In fact, Mr. Smithgall has not actively participated in city life since leaving the mayor's office. I concede that Charlie loves the city, but his absence has made him out of touch and disconnected with the reality of where Lancaster is right now. Today, Lancaster is thriving, our neighborhoods are improving and stronger, our future is full of promise and potential. Everything you heard from Mr. Smithgall tonight was negative. It's terrible. Crime, taxes, bond money. He didn't mind taking $300,000 in bond money from the county to preserve his firing range in southern Lancaster County.
Whoa, what was that?
Don't interrupt me, please. We need only to seize the opportunity before us and overcome the challenges ahead. I'm prepared to lead us forward and achieve our potential. We're on a roll. Ed Rendell described redoing a city as pushing a boulder up a mountain until you get to the peak, and then you start chasing it down the other side. We aren't over the peak yet, but we're close to the peak. We're ready to go. The CRIZ could certainly take us there, and I'll take credit along with Senator Smucker for that ability. We're ready to go, and we're ready to start chasing the boulder. Don't let negativity poison all the good things that are happening in Lancaster.
I've got to respond to something on that.
Okay, I'll allow a 1-minute response from either one, and then we're going to close it out. Please.
Now, these were closings, and we decided who goes last.
Will you, both of you, will be able to stay around for a while afterwards?
I have a birthday party for my 18-year-old grandson back there that I'm waiting to go to, so I'm not going to be around long. No, I'm going to get out of here as soon as I can, to be honest.
You said a minute?
Go ahead, quickly.
There's several very
Just quickly, 30
outrageous-
seconds, quickly.
Real quickly. There's several allegations he's got here. The bond swap. He chose to pay it off. It was not paid off. If he had sat with it, the city would have made money on it. Number two, you said I gave $300,000. I got $300,000 for the county for my range. Absolutely untrue. The county practices at my range absolutely for free. Your allegations are so full of crap, it's pathetic.
Hey. Your farm in Drumore County, you didn't get $300,000 in bond money from the county?
Okay, we're
For
going
my
to,
rifle range, you're crazy.
we're going to
For your
close
farm
it out.
in Drumore County.
For farm preservation.
Gentlemen, on behalf of Lancaster newspapers and the Chamber, I want to thank everyone for coming this evening. Please look for a voter's guide in your paper tomorrow. Polls open at 7 a.m. on Tuesday, November 5th.
They won't listen.
Well.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah, this is...
Bob kept saying to me,
name at the end.
Thank you. Thank you for that, for helping me. No, it's all right. Thank you very much. This side.